It's podcast number 18 of JoetteCalabrese.com, and here's what's coming up.
And it was just coming to light how dangerous antibiotics were. If we really, truly don't want these drugs in our kids' precious little bodies, it falls onto our shoulders. Yeah, and I love when someone comes pre-skeptical. Already skeptical. Really, you're going to have to prove it to me because really, homeopathy, if it was so important, why isn't my doctor using it? Or how come I've never heard about it? Or, and I embrace that. I love that. I have this vision of mothers linking arms across the globe. It is transformational.
We've got a great episode today, and we really look at the heart of Joette's mission, which is to make homeopathy very usable and accessible to moms and families. So in this podcast, we talk about Joette's brand new system she is launching called Study Groups, a gateway to homeopathy. If you're new to JoetteCalabrese.com, or even if you've been with us for a while but haven't known how to get started, this episode is pretty exciting because it's your launch pad into the world of homeopathy. So let's talk study groups. Hi, I'm here with Joette Calabrese. How are you, Joette?
I'm doing well. Hi, Paula. This is really fun. We're going to make this really extemporaneous, right?
Yes, we're just going to talk like we're in my kitchen right now.
Right.
I'm excited about this topic on study groups. It's near and dear to my heart, and I know it's near and dear to your heart.
It is.
So tell us about study groups. What with homeopathy? Tell us about why you started your first homeopathy study group.
Well, I started my first study group back in the 80s when, of course, there was no internet. And it was very hard to find books on homeopathy. Most of them were, from England and Germany, and they had to be translated and all of that kind of stuff. So I had found a homeopath who I liked very much, and she was helping me with, conditions that my children might come up with here and there. And then I asked her if she would teach a group of us. So we got a group together, and I got my friends together. And many of them didn't know what homeopathy was. They thought it meant home remedies, that kind of thing. So I had to do a little bit of selling, but not much, because around that time there was, it seemed to be a big interest, at least in my neck of the woods in New York State, with the problems with drugs in children. And it was just coming to light how dangerous antibiotics were. Still didn't get out into the general public, but it was just coming to light if you were kind of paying attention. So I got this group together, and we met in my living room every Thursday night for 4 years. It was a blast. And at the time, I had only one child. I wasn't working outside of the home. I wanted to be home with him. And I didn't have time outside of the home. My whole life was our home, my parents, my child, my husband, my family. It was all about family, and it was really nice to have kind of a night out. Well, it wasn't really a night out because it was in my living room. But then after a while, we started going other places.
I don't think any group would meet for 4 years every Thursday
night. I know. Exactly.
We didn't love it.
Right.
If it wasn't.
Oh, we absolutely loved it. And sometimes we actually veered off and said, maybe not homeopathy for the next month or two. Let's talk about, let's come up with some recipes that we know are inexpensive, very wholesome, and easily made. And so we shared that kind of stuff. Every once in a while, we take a little break. But the true focus was we mothers all wanted to learn how to take care of our children without being dependent upon pharmaceuticals. That was the bottom line. That's really what it was all about. And so for those who came to the group, I'm going to go on and on. I'm sorry, Paula. You only asked me one simple little question.
I love it.
Yeah, for those who had children who were prone to ear infections, those mothers really studied the ear infection remedies. They wanted to know those, as they should. They wanted to know that handful of homeopathic medicines, what potency to use, how frequently to use it, what the indications were, what the differentials were between this homeopathic and that one. Those who had kids who were more prone to skin conditions, those mothers really made a point of learning all the skin remedies that were based on those particular conditions, of course. So we all became experts in our own little areas based on the maladies that were happening in our families.
That's exactly what I like about this, because, busy moms don't have time to know deeply all those conditions necessarily.
Right.
But when you have a little band of mothers who all know a piece of the puzzle,
right.
If your kid has an ear infection, call the ear infection mom.
Exactly. So what it did is it broadened our understanding, because we were sharing information. So even though my child, I only had one at the time, was not prone to ear infections, he was prone to croup. So I learned the croup remedies. I just said, I better learn this. I better know cough remedies. So, but he did get an ear infection once, and I went to a friend who was our little ear infection specialist.
Right. Well, I have a girlfriend whose son, every time he gets a cough, it becomes a very asthmatic cough, and she came to me super stressed out. What do I do? Homeopathy? And I told her, honestly, I don't know, but call my friend Jessie.
Right.
She's my
Jessie is the cough. Yeah, is the cough person, right?
and Jessie's off in some other state, far away, but my girlfriend here calls her, hi, sorry, Paula said I could call,
right.
and
right.
they worked it out.
Right. It is mothering at its finest. It's integrating mothering and community and like-mindedness, and that's, I have this vision of mothers linking arms across the globe, learning how to use homeopathy, but not just mothers, grandmothers, and fathers can be involved too, but it's usually mothers and grandmothers. And I have this little vision of actually seeing women linking across the whole globe, because, homeopathy is ubiquitous, except in North America. People don't know about it here, but it's all over Europe and Asia, India, South America. You're from South America. It's from South America too.
That's the thing. If you live in those countries, maybe moms don't need to be as versed, because they can go to the neighborhood homeopath down the street. But out here, we don't have that option.
Right. So it belongs. It comes down to our. It falls onto our shoulders.
Right.
If we really take this seriously, if we really truly don't want these drugs in our kids' precious little bodies.
So if you're a mom listening to this and you're thinking, but why do I want to learn all of this? Why can't I just, wait until my kid gets sick and then learn it? You just need to read Joette's blogs and listen to her podcast on antibiotics, because you want to be prepared. You don't want to
scramble, at 2 a.m. when your child wakes up with a screaming ear infection or a strep throat or something. You don't want to say, what do I do now? And where do I get these medicines? No. You want to be prepared.
I hate getting the phone calls from friends who've heard from a friend that I do homeopathy, and they're calling in the middle of a crisis. I hate that, because now, then I spend an hour kind of going through things, selecting a remedy with them, and then next thing I know, the kid's on antibiotics because the mom didn't even know what homeopathy was, and they're scared to use it, and they think maybe the antibiotics are safer. Let's go the safe route, and that just drives me crazy. And that's what's so nice about study groups.
Right.
Is it gives you the forum to get a leg up on this before it happens.
Right. Exactly.
So my next question to you, Joette, is what did you guys talk about in your study group meeting? You just said at the beginning of the interview that some of the textbooks were pretty complicated. I think especially back then, the homeopathy books to learn from were not easy. They were medical.
Yeah, they were medical books, and they were books to learn classical homeopathy. So we got, I don't even remember which book it was, but we got a simple little book that taught us how to use homeopathy for acutes, for those strep throats and ear infections and conjunctivitis and bee stings and that kind of thing. And then the more we learned about that, we realized, well, wait a minute, there's more to learn here. What about the chronics? What about the eczema? What about the food intolerances? What about the allergies? And that's all stuff that has to be learned too.
Right.
And what's great about this is that, and I'm sure mothers will understand when I say that it seems like when I first had my first baby, I had my baby a little later in life. I was in my mid-30s. And up until that time, I had a career. And, I wasn't married, and I got married, and then suddenly, I wanted to have children immediately. And so my life was much different than a young mother's life. So when I had my baby, it seemed like it was one bodily function after another. It was the pregnancy and gaining weight and swelling, and then the milk coming in, and then the birth and the placenta, and then the baby spitting up and the diapers, and it was just one bodily function after another. And homeopathy for me was like my intellectual nourishment. It was so smart and so intelligent and so much fun to learn. And it countered all of the physical bodily functions that I was dealing with on a day-to-day basis. It was the perfect counterbalance to it. And it then allowed me to feel free to spend money, for example, on buying homeopathic medicines, because I wasn't buying shoes and jewelry for myself, or getting a great new hairstyle. I was buying and investing in my family's health. And I could justify it, so that my intellectual pursuit was focused 100% on the care of my family. So it felt not only justified, it felt lofty. It felt great.
Right.
I love opera. I love Italian opera, and I've always said one day I'm going to really study it. I know some, but I want to really take a deep several courses on it. And I actually thought when I was pregnant with my first baby that, maybe I'll do that. Maybe this is the time to do that. Kind of an intellectual pursuit when, when I'm going to be so physically involved in my baby. And then it hit me that I didn't want, antibiotics, etc., in my baby's body. And I said, no. This is going to be my intellectual pursuit, this homeopathy. And it's satisfying. It was very satisfying. To this day, it's satisfying. It's been 30-some years. Still satisfying to me.
Well, there is nothing like curing your own kid by yourself. I remember my son had an asthmatic cough that just developed out of nowhere. He never had it before. He moved to a new state. The allergies in that state were terrible. And he started coughing and just, and I remember I sat for a night. I picked a remedy. I gave it to him. And within 2 or 3 days, it was gone. And I just felt like king of the world for those few days.
Oh, yeah. It's the ultimate human experience to be able to cure your own child.
It is. It's like it's almost like it brings giving birth to the next level. Yeah. Not only have I given his life, but I am maintaining his life to the best of my ability.
Well put, Paula. Well put.
Well, and that's why homeopathy is so exciting to study. It feeds that intellectual side, and it's,
Right. And satisfies the mothering side, of course.
It is. Something I love about you, Joette, is that you are always, everything you produce, every educational material you put out has mom in mind, because you're trying to simplify it and make it usable and ready to go. So tell us about study groups that you're getting out there.
Well, let me just step back for a moment, because there is a little history to that the focus on moms. Because I started out as a mother, and I found it very frustrating in that I could not learn how to treat my family, my children, for chronic conditions like a food intolerance or an allergy or something, unless I was willing to devote many years and a lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars, going to homeopathy school. A lofty pursuit, no doubt about it, but nonetheless something that, and I actually did it, but I felt as though I was being cheated out of something that I thought could be taught to mothers in a simpler way. And then I became a tutor at an international homeopathic school. And as these students came in, I recognized them as, time and again, they were mothers. And I know what they wanted. They wanted what I had wanted. They wanted to be able to treat their families. They had no idea what they were getting into. They did not realize that homeopathy is extremely in-depth, extremely complex. It is medicine. You often need to know anatomy, physiology, pathology, and in order to go to homeopathy school. And so I found that many of these mothers who joined this school, who I worked with closely as their tutors, never graduated. They never completed their studies. And I know why. It's because they thought they were going to learn how to treat their families. They didn't realize they were being trained to become homeopaths out in the world and become a professional homeopath. That's not what they wanted at all. And so I found that irritating and frustrating that was not made clear to them. And so, or perhaps it was and they just dismissed it and believed, no, it's got to be easy. It's got to be like essential oils, because essential oils is really very easy. It's got to be like herbs. Herbs are pretty easy. Right. But homeopathy is not. So in my travels, so to speak, in my professional travels, I've been digging and searching for these 30 years for homeopathic medicines that are specific to the condition, not necessarily to the person. And classical homeopathy, which is what people learn to use when they are being trained as a homeopath in homeopathy school, it's actually medical school of sorts, does not teach this. And so I ferreted it out until I found a lot of them. And then I started to utilize these practical methods. And then I went to the Banerjees in India and studied with them, and they have an entire system around practical homeopathy. So to me, it's important that mothers have this information.
I understand why doctors do it the way they do, because it's so easy. You have a diagnosis and then a protocol, drugs, Exactly. I can understand what you were grabbing at, so go on.
Yeah, so I wanted the same thing, not only for myself, but later on I recognized that I wasn't the only one who wanted this. This is what all mothers want. If the child has a strep throat, what's the remedy? Don't tell me I've got to crack open a medical book and go digging around and find, sift through 30 homeopathic medicines, and depending upon the position that the child is sleeping in, et cetera, give me the remedy. What is the remedy? Now, it doesn't mean it's the only one, but give me the one that's going to work in most cases. I'll hedge my bet, and that's what I teach. That's what I use in my practice. That's what I teach in my classes. That's what we want to teach in these study groups. It's what we teach in the study groups. It's what I teach on my blog. It's simple, it's fast, and you can teach anyone to use these protocols. Anyone can learn this.
Well, and that's the thing. I think, today, you're right, anyone can learn this, but I do feel that today, I can't compare. I don't know what it was like to be a mom in the 80s. I know what it was like to be a kid in the 80s, but I see my friends today, and I see these moms dealing with so much more. Most homes now are dual income, so usually mom and dad are both working. Right. And then you've got kids who almost all have chronic illnesses. My kids were watching this TV show, a movie, I think, something Monsters or whatever. And this grandpa was babysitting the kid, and the mom on her way out the door said, now don't forget to give him the nebulizer before he goes to bed and his breathing treatments. For them to put that in a cartoon shows you how mainstream and common chronic illness is. Today, chronic illness is normal. And it is so stressful to be a mom nowadays, to juggle the chronic illness, plus the work, plus all those other responsibilities. Right. And so you're right. We need practical homeopathy that's straightforward. Right. And to the heart of it right away.
Right. It's all about speed and efficacy. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, it's. I hope it goes without saying that it is also about no side effects. That's what, of course, homeopathy is noted for. And, of course, when I say efficacy, I mean cure. I want to see a cure. I don't want to see that we're postponing this problem for some time in the future when it's going to come back only this time with a vengeance. No, I want it. Right. I want it uprooted. That's the whole idea.
Call it the end of it.
Right. Okay. So Paula, you ran our pilot program. Actually, 2 pilot programs for the study groups. One in Virginia, and then you ran the other one in Texas, where you are now. And what motivated you to do this? I know what motivated me. Tell me what your experience was and what your motivations were.
Well, actually, you motivated me, Joette. And any mom who has friends, and that's everyone, right? You don't figure it out on your own. You go to your girlfriends when your kid has a problem, right? You go to them first before you go to a doctor. You always talk to your girlfriends. And so I'm very drawn to this group setting learning, because I really appreciate the wisdom that other moms give. I love the camaraderie we have when we're raising our kids. I don't care if you're 45 or 25. If you both have a 1-year-old baby, you're instant friends, and you instantly have something to share with each other, And then I remember you mentioning that you did a homeopathy study group, and I thought, that's what I want. Because let me tell you, my whole family came down with strep throat that you've mentioned, And I had diarrhea the entire time. I was so stressed out. And I remember thinking, who can I call? Who can I talk to that's been through this, that can hold my hand and say, you're going to be fine, you're going to get through this. I treated my kid with strep last month. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I didn't have that. I was utterly alone, and I hated it. Now, my husband's very supportive, but I even have girlfriends whose husbands are not very supportive of this. And then you're kind of left to yourself. I couldn't imagine.
Right.
And that's when I said, I want my own study group. I want my own little group of moms who are in the know that can back me up. And I don't want to be alone anymore. And well, it was after.
Yes, and it's not only for those events that are trying such as that, but it also makes it easier when someone says, I can't find this particular remedy in the U.S., but, I found this great place in England and you can buy it online. Or, it's like the same thing with the whole organic food movement. I loved when my friends started to get involved in that with me. Because then I knew that I was going to have more organic foods available to me. There'll be more resources, right. more brains involved, more brawn moving it along. It really, obviously, the teamwork makes a big difference.
Right. So I think that first pilot that we did kind of came together organically. We really started looking at what did moms need to know to get started with homeopathy? What are the basics, the ABCs? And that's kind of what the first half of the study group ended up being that Joette wrote. And then the second half of the study groups really looked at chronic illness. So the first half, the ABCs, we look at acutes. And then the second half, we look at chronic. And I have to say that, when I gathered these friends over to my house the first time, I was kind of begging them. There's this thing called it's really awesome. I really like you. I want you to love this too. It's my friend calls me a homeopathy missionary.
Yeah.
Come in. It's going to be great. And so I
you drew a lot of your friends from your church, right? I mean, this was all through your church.
Yeah. Well, mostly, yeah.
Well, and then they saw you every Sunday, so they had no choice, the poor kids.
I know. Not all of them. A lot of them were interested, too. And some from my homeschool group,
Yeah.
And then, I felt like I had something to prove to them that this really is awesome. And I kind of crossed my fingers. I hope someone gets sick. And then
you're a cruel woman.
And then by the end of study group, by the end of the 8 weeks, well, it's eight classes, and so we divided them weekly, but you could do them twice a week or whatever.
Right.
By the end of the 8 classes, these moms, there was this transformation, and it was amazing. I loved to see that transformation, and that's when I told Joette, I said, Joette, we need to document this in videos. We need to document this transformation. What has happened in a matter of 8 classes to these moms. And so we did. We have 7, little videos of these moms talking about that transformation to them.
That's the word. It is transformational.
It is. And we're not exaggerating one iota.
Yeah, and I love when someone comes pre-skeptical, already skeptical. Really, you're going to have to prove it to me, because really, homeopathy, if it was so important, why isn't my doctor using it? Or how come I've never heard about it? Or, and I embrace that. I love that. I like a good, solid discussion on those kinds of subjects, or on that subject, right. I should say. And I know that in that group, I think you had a couple of skeptics.
Oh, I sure did. And by, I've actually done 3 study groups now. I've done the 2 pilot studies that we carefully watched and kind of took records of and statistics. But the last, I love it now. Before it used to intimidate me, that skepticism.
Yeah.
Now I feel like I just say whatever you say. I say, you know what, that's okay. You don't have to believe in this. It'll still work if we pick the right remedy.
Right.
And I just love being that confident, and it does. It just keeps working and working, By the end of my second study group, I had one mom who was on fibromyalgia drugs for, I think, 4 years now, and she's completely off of them. Another one has, all of this physical pain, kind of like fibromyalgia, but different, and she's tons better.
And the gut people, all the gut people with the food intolerances, that's so big today, so big.
And so it's getting to the point now where I feel like my telephone, my email, and my door is being beaten down. I heard about your group. When are you going to have another one? And I'm like, I just taught one. For heaven's sakes, it was 8 weeks, and I'm exhausted. So
So, I mean, the study group curriculum is wonderful because it's going to hand it off to
and the other part of this, Paula, is for you, and I found this for myself too when I taught homeopathy in different venues. Just like anything, you think you understand it, you think you have a good understanding of it, and then someone throws you a curveball, and you say, "Wow, I don't know the answer to that question," and it forces you to research it and find the answer. And so it forces you to learn your craft, so to speak, even better. So by taking on these classes, you're not actually teaching them, although you did do a lot of teaching. It's unnecessary because we have the curriculum now, right? I mean, you wouldn't say that you have to actually be teaching, but being a part of it and organizing, bring your friends in a way, you're still teaching on some level or another because you're going to offer your experiences. It rounds out your understanding. It fleshes it out in such a more in-depth way that it's not boring if you already know all of this stuff. Because first of all, it's not boring because you're teaching others, and that's exciting. But it's also not boring because we're using protocols that no one else knows about. Really, these protocols that we use are pretty much unknown in the Western world. So there's always something new to learn.
And you're right when you say that you don't have to be the teacher and know this. And so, think about my first study group. I knew very, very little about homeopathy. I knew very basic stuff. And so, between the first, the second, and then by my third time that I did study group, I mean, there's a lot of information. So what we did is we constructed a study group booklet that has everything that I wish I had had. They say from soup to nuts. So, it has a chapter reading that gives you the background information. And then it has a guided discussion guide. Number 1, say this to the group. And then you just read it and say it. And then it just hand walks you through it. And that would have been so nice. Because I can read. I can follow step-by-step instructions.
Well, especially as a homeschooling mother. As you know, there are a lot of times when you're homeschooling your kids and you don't know the subject, but if you read it the night before, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Yeah,
even if you're just one step ahead.
I love it. That's exactly how I picked my son's math curriculum.
That's how I did it with my kids too.
I hate math.
Yeah, you learn it the night before and you present it the next day. Now it's yours. Now you get it.
Yep, or even, I'm not going to lie, the morning of, sit down, okay, open the book, humana, okay, here we go.
Humana, exactly. Oh, Paula.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that about this curriculum. And I love that you always have, moms and regular people in mind. Yeah. So I'm really excited about the study groups. I feel like we've been working on it for a really long time, and I really think it's going to bless a lot of lives,
I agree.
But you have to have that moxie.
The moxie. Gut, spunk, and moxie. That's what it's about. But that's what it takes to be a mother anyway. You really can't be too flexible. Flexible certainly with mothering and understanding your children, but you have to have a posture when you raise your kids in disciplining them, in what you're going to serve to food for their foods, what kinds of education, what their spiritual life is going to be, how you're going to carry this all out. You really have to have some pretty definitive ways of looking at life. If you haven't gotten that far before mothering or just as you're mothering, then it's really time to start muscling up and figuring it all out.
Nowadays you do. I feel like everything in the world today is so extreme. The morals are so extreme. The medicine especially is so extreme. It's not, when I was a kid, all right, just let the cough wear off. It'll be fine. Now if you can get in trouble. You haven't taken them to the doctor. You haven't gotten your vaccines. Everything is so extreme.
Yeah. There's a lot of number one. There's a lot of paranoia about health in children and illness in children. And interestingly, there was a study. There have been many studies done showing that really the danger in children's lives are not childhood illnesses but accidents. That's where the true danger lies. It doesn't happen very often, particularly if you're living in North America or Europe and countries where there's good sanitation and decent food and families that can care for their children well. But it takes a certain amount of flexing, and I think it comes naturally for women for the most part. Okay. Once we have a baby, there's no turning back, and you become the best you can be, and you become the mother lioness, and you become you flex your muscles, and you flex your mothering muscles and your intellect, and you put that together and make it the best mothering. And I call it becoming a mighty mom. Yeah. You really want to make this this act of mothering more than something quiet and serene, although that's good too. We want it to be powerful. We even want it to be a political statement of sorts. We mothers can change the world if we decided. We really have the power. We have the buying power. We have the resources. And at least in North America, women are, I believe, the most privileged group ever known in society. We have everything at our fingertips. We have the ability to become and do whatever we want. And if we've chosen motherhood as our chosen vocation, we can be great at it. Yeah. And why not? Mighty moms.
I love it. Well, thank you, Joette. If you're listening to this and you're thinking about, wanting to get that mightiness that Joette's talking about, study groups is your gateway. It'll get you right in there and it'll get you started. And I'm really excited to send this out to the world. It's been a very meaningful project for me, and I know it's been for you, Joette, and it is. It's your gateway to be a mighty mom. I love it.
Well, Paula, I have to thank you, too, for putting this all together and making this happen from a distance, from state to state. It's really great. So thank you, too, Paula.
You just listened to a podcast from JoetteCalabrese.com, where nationally certified American homeopath, public speaker, and author Joette Calabrese shared her passion for helping families stay healthy through homeopathy and nutrient-dense nutrition. Like Joette says, homeopathy works.